Welcome to the Know Your Legacy podcast. I'm your host, Vipul Basania, and today's guest is Scot Chrisman. Scot is a former professional skier who now hosts the number one ranking podcast on iTunes called The Athletic Stance, where he discusses everything mindset, diet, and what it takes to be a professional athlete and a world-class performer through the eyes of some of the top skiers around the world like Lexi DuPont, Hadley and Ingrid Backstrom. He's now an entrepreneur himself and helps other athletes become an entrepreneur and understand what their true brand value is. So Scot, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here, brother.
Oh, most definitely, man. It was a pleasure meeting you at Thrive. I'm glad we crossed paths there. And it's only been like 6 to 8 weeks, but it feels like I've known you for ages, man.
Seriously, I know. It's been, it was just serendipitous that we ended up running into each other, and, you know, like your mission and your vision that you've got going on aligns so much with what we got going, with what I've got going on. And I just am, I'm super excited that you pulled me onto the podcast.
No, I'm glad that you took the time to be here. So this is the second time we're doing this recording, because the first time that we started it went completely wrong and the laptop restarted. But you were saying, like, we were talking about how you actually got into skiing in the first place, like what it was about that sport. And I think you were telling me that you were watching the Olympics and there was like, you almost had a pull to want to be like a world-class performer in that particular sport. And so if you could just shed light on, like, what was it that drew you to that sport compared to like the many other sports that the Olympics also host?
Yeah, totally. I think it was a combination of just exposure, having my parents loved skiing, and it was something that they did together. They would save money before I was even born to go on ski trips together. And so it was a part of the family. And then the combination of that, I had some talent or some innate skill. And then I did pretty well at an event before I watched the Olympics, and I won. I was 7 years old and won racing against 10-year-olds. And it was the first insight that I could do well in the sport. And then I remember just watching the Olympics and watching the family gather around and watching all these fans and feeling this energy surrounding the Olympics. And especially for me, ski racing was like the thing that I knew about and I could relate to. I couldn't necessarily relate to I could relate to hockey. I could relate, like, I did some figure skating when I was little. I did, I did some other more winter-centric sports. But I guess for some reason, skiing just really pulled at my heartstrings and really was the thing that I was highly attracted to. And I don't know if it was one specific thing. I think the individuality of the sport also really helped. But yeah, it was just kind of one of those things where I think the universe just kind of led me where I needed to be, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's crazy because there's always that one thing that each of us has in this world that we're gifted at or we're called to do almost, and it's amazing that you found that at such a young age. But in terms of like going to, because you were saying that you were going up to the ski mountains with your family, etc., and staying in those huts. So is skiing something that was already in your family? Like your parents were doing it already, or?
Mm-hmm. Yep, my parents were already doing it. They taught me how to ski from a young age. We would go up to Steamboat, Colorado, and, we would leave at night from Boulder. It would be getting dark because it's in the winter, and, sunsets early. It'd be these long, monotonous drives in the dark, and you'd feel the air temperature. You'd put your hand on the window and the window would just be frozen, and you could feel like the air temperature drop, and you'd get in and you wouldn't really be able to see anything around, but you would end up, we stayed at this condo that my grandparents had up in Steamboat, and it had the same smell to it. And you'd crawl into bed, it would be super cold, the heat would kick on. By the time you woke up in the morning, like, mom was making breakfast, and it was just one of those things where, like, just really loved being a human in that experience. And feel really grateful that it was one of those homey, nostalgic things that I just really, really enjoyed doing from a young age. And because I was around my parents and they had such passion for skiing, I think it just kind of rubbed off on me. And then I had an innate skill. I learned how to ski when I was 2 years old, so I don't even remember learning how to ski. I think I was probably better at skiing than I was at walking at one point, and still probably am, right? So,
yeah, no, that's crazy, because at that young age, you learn to do something and it becomes like ingrained, a part of your DNA almost, when you learn it at that age. So there's no surprise in why you are, at the professional level that you were. So, but I mean, looking at it from the perspective of when you're preparing for a race, because I know you did a lot of races. Now, that's not something, the process itself is not something that we all go through as an average person, unless you're immersed in the sport as seriously as you were. So take me and the listeners and the viewers through the feeling and what's going through your head as you're preparing, going up that mountain, and then when you're looking over the edge, like what is that like?
Yeah, totally. Well, preparation, like I'll get to that in the moment experience, but preparation was a year-round thing at a certain level. I got sponsored when I was 12 years old. And so I was doing dry land in the summer. I was working out in the summer. And I would also go out to Mount Hood, Oregon. I would spend about 4 weeks on the snow at a glacier there training, or I'd go up to Whistler. And I would spend time visualizing. I would spend time, there's this whole, it became a lifestyle, and it was legitimately everything that I was doing. I did my schoolwork and did well in my schoolwork, because if I didn't do well in my schoolwork, I couldn't travel for skiing. So literally everything was preparation for skiing. But bringing it back into race day, and we trained a lot. I skied 6 days a week from when I was about 11 or 12 to when I was 18. So that conditioning of being on the hill, it felt pretty regular, but there's a little more high intensity, high energy feeling and setting or context to the situation. And oftentimes you're like, you can feel this potential of like, if I do well, then, I could possibly end up with a, like making a connection, or I could make it to Junior Olympics, or, like oftentimes a race led to something else. So there's a certain amount of pressure. There's a certain amount of just nerves and anxiety. You really want to do well for your coaches, for yourself, for your parents, for, for whoever. And then like some pressure, because I was pretty decent from a young age. And so I had this pressure on me to perform. It's like, I really am I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna make this happen. And, riding up the lift, a lot of the times the best mental exercise that you could do is like, forget that you're even at a race, forget that anything else is going on, and just go back to the roots of like, I have skied hundreds of times in my life, and I have, done this thousands of times. And, at this point I've skied for thousands of days, but, going back into the moment there, it's like trusting on my instincts and not letting the fear or this like false threat take hold of my body, because really that's what fear is it's the perception of a threat. And, at that point, I was so used to going fast. There were a couple races where there was some intimidating stuff that we did. But for the most part, I was so conditioned to going, 60, 50, whatever, miles an hour on skis or higher. Wow. And so there were like some steep pitches where you come over and you're in the race, you take off. And, some of the rollovers, you kind of get some nerves, because you're like, you don't know where the next gate is. So you really got to practice visualizing when you inspect the course and make sure that you're going to have the perfect trajectory when you're coming off. But for the most part, it was like convincing yourself that the fear wasn't there or that it didn't need to be there.
That's one of the other things I was going to ask you, actually, because it's interesting because you've been exposed to this from a young age. Like, so what's your relationship with fear now? Because you've been exposed to it over and over and over again.
So I don't have very much fear at all, to be honest. Like, I think compared to most people, I am not a very fearful person. Like let's extrapolate this down to, I don't lock my car generally. I don't lock my house at night. Like, I don't live in fear in any way, shape, or form through 90% of my actions. And like, obviously there's some people here that are like, yeah, you don't live in the hood. Like, of course, of course. But like, even in Denver, I'll forget to lock my car, and I really don't worry about it because I really, I believe in manifestation. I believe we create our own realities. And I also think that fear can be one of the things that really takes life away from, it really takes away from the human experience, and it takes away from the consciousness that we're blessed with. And, like, my relationship with fear is I get really angry when things get outside of my control that I really want to be inside of my control. And it is fear represented as anger. But past that, like, I still get nervous doing some public speaking. I still get nervous in situations where I don't have where I haven't conditioned myself to think that, like, I am really I know I'm an expert at things, even if I'm not an expert at them yet. And so I can carry that confidence into situations that I really shouldn't have that level of confidence with. But I still get, I get fear of, like, embarrassment or fear. Like, I'm DJing a music festival in a week and a half, and I've got some fear around that. I'm like, what if I mess up? But at the end of the day, like, I can invest in, I can spend a lot of money. Sorry, my dog in the background. I can spend a lot of money on an investment. I can do a lot of things that would, like, scare most people. Be like, yeah, I'm going into debt, a shit ton of money right now to make this investment happen, and not really bat an eye at it. Like, I'll have a little bit of internal dancing around. Like, is this the right thing? Are you sure you're doing the right thing, man? Like, what the heck? But at the end of the day, it's really easy for me to just, like, 90% of things in life, 99% of things in life aren't life and death. And we deal with fear because we think they're life and death. Our reptile brain, our, the fight or flight part of the nervous system inputs what's going on around us and then tries to perceive, is this a life and death situation? If it is a life and death situation, I'm going to release adrenaline or norepinephrine, and it's going to cause me to have a heightened state of, sensation, and I'm going to be ready to fight or flee at any given time. And there's a perfect balance of that. Like, you don't want to be so calm that you're dead in in most situations. So a little bit of that is good, but so many people walk around and, like, even, like, negativity and divisiveness is just fear, but they walk around and they're like, they need to lock their car because what if someone does something? And it's like, it's just a material possession. You're not going to die. Like, yeah, I know you put a lot of hard work and effort into, whatever is in your car. And if you lose it, like, it's not going to be good. But at the end of the day, it's freaking material possession. It's not life and death. So, like, I can very, very easily rationalize fear and just the overall perception of reality in a lot of ways. bringing it back to the hill, when I'm about to go, because I went from ski racing to big mountain skiing, when I was about to go hit a 70-foot cliff, and
just before you carry on, just can you say the difference between ski racing to big mountain, just for those who don't know?
Totally. Yeah, definitely. So ski racing is the fastest down the hill. It is all objectively determined because you go out of a start gate, you trip the wand, and you cross a laser, you break the plane at the finish, and that records your time. You're going in between gates. There's different distances between the gates. So there's different disciplines. There's slalom, giant slalom, super giant slalom, and downhill. In consecutive order, they get faster. So slalom, the gates are the closest together. Downhill, they're the farthest apart. That is what like Lindsey Vonn does. And then you have big mountain skiing, which is like what you would see in a Warren Miller film or more in a ski film, where you are standing at the top of a mountain. There could be avalanche danger. There's big cliffs below you, and you're skiing down, and you're gonna jump off some of these big cliffs into powder, and then navigate to the next cliff, jump off, it's like they're very different because big mountain skiing is very much like, your skis are your paintbrush, and you get to go just, paint whatever you want on the hill, go experience whatever you want on the hill. Ski racing is very rigid and very much the same, where it's like you push out of the start gate, you're making the same right-hand, left-hand turn that everyone else made, but hopefully your technique is a little bit better than theirs, and so you end up being faster. And big mountain skiing is very subjective. Judges score you based on what they think. Ski racing is very objective, where it is your time and your time alone. So you could look like crap coming down the hill, but be fast. It doesn't matter that you looked like crap. The only thing that matters is that you won. And so, yeah, that's kind of the difference there.
Awesome.
Big mountain skiing is a little bit different when it comes to dealing with fear, because it's one of the few situations in life where my decision-making skills, obviously when you're driving 90 miles an hour on the highway or whatever, like your decision-making skills are keeping you alive or killing you, but most people know how to drive a car, even if it's 65 miles an hour. Like, it's not this fight or flight, like, oh my God, if I turn left and hit the guardrail, I'm going to die, like, you might subconsciously know that, but you're not thinking about it. When you go to pull a double backflip or jump off a 70-foot cliff, or something where you could land on your head, or you could like some of the cliffs that I hit had rocks or trees, and I've had a lot of season-ending injuries in the past 5 years, and we'll get to that farther down the line, I think. But there are situations where you are putting your life at risk, and you need to be able to assess what is happening. And so, like, one of the things when dealing with fear there is you make the decision once you know all the facts. So you need to know how much snow there is, because with when it snows, it can cover up a rock. If it snows an inch, it can cover up a rock. But that snow, that inch worth of snow, is not going to protect you from the rock at all. So you got to know what the conditions are. If it snowed 2 feet, you're a lot more likely to jump off a 70-foot cliff than if it snows an inch. So knowing all the facts, knowing that it kind of comes down to this internal feeling and silencing my brain and listening to my gut. And if my gut says yes, then do it. If my gut says no, listen to it and don't do it. But not, that's my techniques of mitigating fear or dealing with fear, when it really truly is a life and death situation where that if I mess up on this cliff, there is a chance I could die. And so mitigating that risk is huge.
So there's quite a few things I want to get into there, but just before we move into some of the other stories and some of the other experiences you've had, for those who are listening, just to make it quite practical for them, how would you then transfer that knowledge from skiing of dealing with fear to then everyday life? Like for those who are listening, probably not skiers, all of them, not into like extreme sports, but they're looking to understand your mindset and how they can use that in business, entrepreneurship, or some of the few that are doing dangerous activities like that for the first time and not as experienced as you. How would you tell them or give them advice to process and evaluate those situations when moving forward?
Totally. The number one question you can ask is this life and death? Is this something that's going to kill me? Most of the time it isn't, and you can kind of laugh at like the fear, and it'll start to subside a little bit if you're having a major fear-based reaction where it's starting to take control of you physiologically to the point where you are actually being controlled by fear versus controlling the fear. So the number one question you can ask is this life and death? And the answer could be it feels like it, but no, it's not. And just that distinction can take back that level of urgency. And then past that, understanding your own physiology. So understanding where fear comes from, why it exists, and what its purpose is. Because fear is meant to keep us alive and it's meant to keep us safe. And most of the time in this world, fear is just a giant defense mechanism that's slightly outdated, because as we've gone through this evolutionary curve in society from the Industrial Revolution to the technological revolution that we're in and beyond, there is our brains have the capacity to evolve, and even like our DNA, we've got junk genes that have the capacity to evolve and are shaped by the environment and experiences that we're placed in. And understanding all of that, and that we are living in a slightly outdated operating system, is huge. It's really like important to know that your operating system tells you to be afraid and to fight things when that may not be the best thing for you to do. And so when people say everything you ever wanted is on the other side of fear, there's a level of being able to listen to your intuition and understand what each kind of, there's head-based fear, there's heart-based fear, and then there's gut-based fear. And most of the time, gut-based fear, you need to listen to. You absolutely need to listen to your gut. Your heart-based fear, that can come in when you have emotionally put yourself in a situation where someone else hasn't had enough emotional bandwidth to receive you as a person. And so understanding the times and the places to be vulnerable, to express your emotions, and creating a network where you can do that is super important. And then up to the head, understanding this idea that most of the time if your head is telling you shit's wrong, you just tell it, fuck off. And I hope no one's offended by that. But really, it's like I try and tell my head to shut up a lot of the time. If it's a gut-based reaction, if I'm really feeling it in my gut, I listen. If I'm feeling it with my heart, I question. I say, why are you here? What is this about? What are you afraid that could happen if you express yourself? Is this a safe space to express what's happening? But if it's my head, most of the time it's just trying to take me in the wrong direction. And also understanding that the fight or flight state of mind is very much, it's connected to the spinal cord, and the spinal cord is connected to the nervous system, and the nervous system is what inputs. I hate that it's called the nervous system, because by nature it acts, its name says that we're supposed to be nervous beings. But the funny thing about it is it's really only the brainstem that is creating nervousness in the fight or flight state of mind. And the nervous system is actually, it's a sensation system, and it's basically a tuning fork to the extra dimensional senses, or it is an extra dimensional sense. It really is like a sixth sense in a way, where your nervous system inputs these feelings from your environment that you can't perceive through your five senses. And it is also the five senses, but it's this combination of other things as well. And I'm sure there might be some scientists that listen to this that are like, what is this guy smoking? But yeah, like fear in general, once you understand it, and this is kind of dangerous because you can let your brain wrap hold of this and then pull you off the deep end in other ways, right? But understanding what fear is and being able to transcend past your first reaction into this idea that generally your first reaction, unless it is a true life and death situation, and your first reaction, you will just act, you'll do something. Generally your first reaction, if it's fear-based, is like sometimes it's a distraction, and it can take you away from, it's a finite point, and if you give it a little bit of extra time and you move past that brainstem portion into the frontal cortex where your true decision-making power is, then all of a sudden you can start to evaluate the infinite possibilities of the situation and understand that it's not a life and death situation, and then make the best applicable decision given more information. So roundabout tangent there, but
I feel like I've got a PhD in biology now. No, I love it though, because everything you just said, I resonate with deeply, because it's everything I've realized earlier this year and last year. Is one thing that's really helped me is two things actually. One is, same as what you said, is understanding the actual function of fear. Like, why is it there? Understand who you are and what your biology is there for. It was there, that evolved hundreds of thousands, millions of years ago, to actually allow us to react before we could process, like cognitively, or process like the front part of our thinking brain was developed properly. It was, we could only go by sensation, right? Like, so like our nervous system would light up in that way so that we could get away from things that we feared. And that, I guess, it had that place there to keep us surviving as a species. Now, we still have the same stimulus, in the sense that we still have touch, taste, see, listening and seeing. And it's how we perceive those situations. Like, for example, public speaking. Like, I'm pretty sure that's not a life and death, literally life and death. No one's going to shoot you while you're speaking, or so you hope. But I mean, but we're scared to do it for some reason. We're telling ourselves this story, and then most of it comes down to, am I good enough? Or what will people say? Will I stumble? All of these things. And then that part of our reptilian brain lights up, and you know this because you're a speaker, and you then mix up those emotions, like what they actually mean. And I was listening to this in Robert Greene's new book, Laws of Human Nature. And it's fascinating, because at the start, he sets the scene of what emotions are, because the whole book is about understanding emotions and other people's emotions. And he was saying how we process like emotions the wrong way. That's why there's such an issue. Like, you have an emotion that arises, but you're not thinking about where it's come from. Like, it's arisen, yes, because of the stimuli you just had, but your brain is associating it to something else that's happened way before. And because you can't recognize it, you mistake it for what's happening in the moment. And then you make that connection. You think, oh, speaking on stage is a scary thing, when in fact it was something else, years before that happened. So, understanding all of these things at a very like scientific level, like you were saying. And the second thing is something simple, which is, every time you feel fear in a situation, like you want to talk to a girl, or you want to introduce yourself at a networking event, or you want to do your first episode of a podcast, or stand on stage for the first time, you feel the fear and then do it anyway, and train your brain to think, oh shit, I felt it now. I now have to do it. Now I'm obliged to do it because the feeling's arisen. And I've tried to do that myself more and more. It sounds silly, but something as simple as someone was reading an interesting book on the train. This is at some point last year. I was traveling on the tube to go into the city in London. Someone was reading a really fascinating book about the origin of birds. And I was like, damn, this looks pretty cool, looking at dinosaurs and how they evolved. And then I just said, I was thinking, shall I speak to him? Shall I not? And I was like, I felt the feeling. Now I have to do it. So then I just nudged him. I was like, hey, that book looks quite interesting. You know, what's it about? And we got talking, and he became really happy that I asked him and I took interest. He, turned around. I learned some stuff, and he went away happy. And I don't know how that's impacted him for the rest of his day. Maybe it's brought his mood up. But the point is, I became 1% more confident and progressed in my character just because I pushed myself to do it. And so I'm curious to know how training your brain in that way through the sport has leaked out into other areas of your life.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I have a confidence about me that allows me to like walk into anything, and I could be a newbie and I'm like, I'm going to own this. Like, I'm going to crush it at this. And it's not like, for me, it's no longer about I'm going to be the best at this, because I can only be the best me. I can't be the best you. I can't be the best anyone else. I can only be the best me. And I spent so much time in competition that it isolated me and it limited my ability to create life-lasting relationships, because I was in competition with people that I wasn't in competition with, And it's hard because we have, like one of the reasons, I'm just going to jump around for 1 second, is one of the reasons that we are afraid of public speaking is because when there are a lot of eyes on us, we feel like we're going to die, because in the old, like if you're walking through in the tundra and all of a sudden a lot of eyes are on you. And that's that feeling when you think that someone's watching you and you think about it and it makes you like fearful. It's because you think that like a predator is watching you. And it's all this fear-based instinct of like, if you were naked standing on a hill in the middle of, Africa, and a bunch of eyes are on you, it's likely you're going to die, So that's like one of the base reasons physiologically, even instinctually, that we feel like, public speaking is like some of people's biggest fears, is because it's really deep down genetically ingrained in us because we don't want eyes on us. And it's this like, so back to this competition-based reality that I was living in, a lot of the time competition is rooted in fear. It's fear that someone else is going to get or have something that you feel like you need. And so the, like being able to, like realize that those fears generally are just completely unfounded, and moving past them and creating those situations where like, like I will pretty much walk up to anyone and be like, I like your hat, I like your shirt, whatever it is. And if it leads to an hour-long conversation, cool. If they just say cool, thanks, and walk off, cool. I have no expectation out of it at all, and I'm not afraid of I'm not afraid of even making a fool out of myself. One of the things that got in my way so long, and it all comes down to this idea that we all want a tribe. If we are dismissed by the tribe back in the day, if we are sick, injured, or whatever, and the tribe doesn't value what we bring to the table, we're not going to be taken care of. You're not going to get your food. You're not going to be able to stay warm because the tribe doesn't value what you're bringing to the table. So there's this innate fear there as well of we want to be accepted. If we don't have acceptance, then the tribe, we may die because of the way that the old tribe used to, just the infrastructure, or the societal infrastructure of the tribe. And when you can, make those distinctions of like, cool, like I'm going to put my podcast episode out and I don't care if there's a mistake. I don't care if someone gives me a bad review, because I was talking to my friend about this and I was like, if you can see past the idea of a bad review being like, it's really not bad. I love bad reviews. Sometimes I'll get triggered real quick because I'm like, oh shit, like I poured my heart, my energy and everything into that. Then as soon as I can deconstruct and be like, oh, maybe that guy's just having a bad day. Maybe, maybe this, that, or whatever. So the initial reaction is like, shit, that's all my energy and I didn't get accepted. Stop thinking that, move past that. Is this life and death? No. Okay. So what is the lesson that can be learned? What can I learn from what just happened? If they tell me I had a bad audio quality on my podcast, cool, I'm going to save up some money and buy a microphone. If they said that I was rambling, screw them. I don't care. I ramble. That's me. And it's not that big of a deal. Maybe next time I'll try and be a little bit more focused in on my topic, or maybe I won't, because I have other people that are reaffirming the idea that what I'm doing is just what I'm supposed to be doing, right? So being able to bring confidence and not be afraid of what other people have to say or think about me. And part of that is like, yeah, I was a sponsored skier at the age of 12. So like, okay, so this comes with two offshoots to it. One, I can always go back to places where I had power and be like, no one can take that from me. No one can take away the idea that I was a professional skier. No one can take that away from me, ever. And sometimes it's like, who cares if you were a professional skier or not? Like, it really doesn't matter. So like sometimes that power can go away, even though that, you have those places of power, but like really understanding that no one can take away your unique energy signature, your unique fingerprint on the canvas of society besides you, besides your own freaking fight or flight state of mind. And that for me has got me over the hump of launching my podcast, writing my book, speaking my truth about my addictions, the traumas that I've had in my life, the poor decisions that I've made, all of the things that I have had where people could be like, why would you talk about that? Why would you tell people about that? And I'm like, because if I can tell someone about it and help someone else, what does it matter if I'm afraid? What does it matter if two people think I'm a piece of shit because I was addicted to pain pills back in the day? Whatever. If it helps save one person's life, I won. I won that game. You judged me and I helped save someone's life. You know what I mean? So
I completely agree. I resonate with that so much because I started to think that way last year, and I was really reflecting on my journey and where I've come, and I was just like, you know what, this thing is bigger than me. It's bigger than me. So, if I fail, if I look stupid, it doesn't even matter, because it's not. I'm just a vehicle, a channel that's channeling the energy of the universe or whatever it is, my gift, through this body, through this meat sack, so that I could operate to bring whatever I need to bring, like give birth to whatever I need to give birth to in this world. That's what it is essentially. And so whatever happens along the way, it's lessons to pass on to others. So when you think of it that way and you think, right, well, this journey and this destination that I'm trying to reach, it's not for me. It's for the things that I can do and learn from along the way and then share. That's if you can't share it, then there's no point you being here. You feel the most fulfillment when you're sharing with others. When would you rather eat a meal by yourself or with someone else? Would you rather watch a movie by yourself or with someone else? And so would you what makes you feel good, buying a material object or giving $10 or £10 to someone else? Like we all know what it feels like and which one is better, which one we prefer. And so in the same way, if you were skiing but you didn't have an audience or someone that you could then go and tell the story to, like you're telling me now, then what use is it? Like, it doesn't, like, you're not going to get as much fulfillment. If you were just skiing in the dark alone, you couldn't speak to anyone for 70 years and that's it. Like, the whole excitement, at least I hope, is for you to come and share your stories afterwards. That's where, like, you feel lit up, you know? I don't know if I'm right in saying that.
Totally. No, and that's one of the best places to be in a ski town after the ski day. And I don't condone this because it's been I'm 2 years sober from alcohol, but I don't condone the drinking aspect of the skiing community. But one of the best places you can be after a long epic day of skiing is at the bar, hearing everyone's excitement, talking about what they did, their favorite run, their favorite turn, whatever happened. And it's not even really about the story, but it's about this shared energetic connection. One person is just wildly excited about this one run that they had where they felt free. And maybe it was a very unique experience in that time, and they would have loved it no matter what. But then they got to bring it to a group and talk about it. And all of a sudden, not only did they get to experience it, but everyone else around them got to experience that same freedom because they took that feeling inside of them and empathetically helped the other people by lifting up their emotions in a way that, you know, you got to share your experience with others. And I totally agree that is, at the end of the day, that is the most important thing that you can do on this planet, is spend time around other people, authentically relating and learning how to communicate and learning how to be in relationship with passersby and in relationships with family and intimate partners and friends. But being in relationship with others, like, the worst thing that you can do to someone that is in prison is put them in solitary confinement. The absolutely worst thing that you can do. They're around murderers, rapists, killers, pedophiles, all these nasty, you know, these people that have, you know, disturbed minds, whatever it is. The worst thing you can do to them is put them in solitary confinement. If that doesn't speak to how much we need human connection and human relation and how powerful it is, I don't know what does, you know?
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, the best times that I have are 99% of the time when I'm sharing an experience with someone. And it's in the sharing, as you said, that energetic connection. That's what it is. And I think it's in the book, I think Social by Matt Lieberman, who says, like, we thrive off connections with other people. And that's why, regardless of if you're an introvert or an extrovert, you need to have some sort of human connection. And that's really what brings meaning and value to your life. Because if you were just going about doing everything on your own, you will eventually end up depressed. Like, there is, you need, I think deep down we crave that tribe feeling, of being a part of something. That's probably the best way to describe it. We need to feel a part of something, whether it's an online community, a friends group, you know, something that we're going to, a club. And I'm sure skiing provided that community and that feeling for you.
I felt so isolated for so long when I quit ski racing when I was 18. I got hardcore into drugs, selling drugs. I did not like the person that I was becoming. I was spending time around people, but I wasn't authentically relating to them. And I was spending more time around them because I wanted permission to be an addict rather than I wanted to actually form authentic emotional connections with them. And a lot of the people that I was hanging out with did not have the emotional quotient, the emotional intelligence, or the ability to truly relate in the way that I needed or wanted to. And that was a really isolating, super depressing, just like a really, really hard time in my life. And then I went to college and I went to the University of Denver, and I was around a ton of people, but I never felt so alone in my life because I had gone out and I had done a crap ton of drugs. I had massive social anxiety from all the LSD that I had done. And and just all the things. Plus I had shame and fear and guilt surrounding like, oh, well, I made all these decisions and did I just completely mess up my entire life because I became an addict to pain pills, because I did so much LSD, because I did so many things. And like, I could feel a difference in my psyche and the way that my brain's cognition was, the operational condition that it was in and the cognition that I was having. And so I was like, I felt so alone because I had gone out and I had learned all of these things in that time period of like, okay, I don't want to do drugs. And like, I still drank for quite a while, and I use medical marijuana, but I'm like very regimented about it now. That's really one of the only things that's a drug. I wouldn't call it a drug. For me, it's a medicine more than anything. But I really was I was really alone, even though I was around a bunch of people. And then I packed up my car, and this is a place what's so funny. Like, so many people could be so fearful about this. I packed up my car. I dropped out of college where I had an academic scholarship, and I moved to Montana to chase the Free Skiing World Tour. And I felt so at home as soon as I left, went on the road, and I was actually at home being alone when I separated myself from the University of Denver. And then I found my tribe of people chasing the Free Skiing World Tour, all the rest of the athletes that were chasing the Free Skiing World Tour, who were passionate about skiing, who absolutely loved what they were doing, who were chasing these memories and experiences, and who didn't care about the materialistic side of life. And they just wanted to spend time together, enjoying the mountains, enjoying the playground that God gave us. And just like, I found those people, and all of a sudden I finally became alive again. But it was this long period of time where I blocked off. And this is, something that can happen with people that I've experienced is you can be in the same room as people, but not authentically relating or not able to communicate. And communication is about seeing each other's point of view, not being right. And that's like something that I say all the time. Nicholas Bayerly, the $1 Billion Body, he has instilled that in me immensely, and it's been really powerful. But that's one of the really, you were talking about how we need to perceive where our emotions are coming from. We also need to be able to communicate that to others, because if we can communicate it and rationalize it, other people can see our point of view and validate that we're feeling the emotion without escalating the emotion. And that's a really powerful distinction in communication that creates a tribe, because if someone's like, I'm really concerned about this, and someone's like, dude, I totally know that I totally feel why you're concerned. I totally see it. And, if you thought about it this way, does that help you? And, those things are ways that we can lift each other up and kind of pull ourselves out of like going down the deep end when we get so wrapped up in our mind thinking that something is a permanent existence. For me, like that I screwed up my life by getting addicted to all this stuff. Like just having friends that valued me for me. And like, it was so hard for me for a long time. And I'm ranting right now, but it was so hard for me for a long time to be able to show up in a room and feel like I deserved to be there because I talked so much shit on myself in my head because of all the mistakes that I had made. Because I had this plush ass life, crushing it in skiing, doing really well. And I blew it all away on drugs and alcohol and like this like hedonistic lifestyle. And then for a while there, the stories in my head were like, you're not valuable. Why the hell are you even on this planet? All this shit. And then that turned around and I found the skiing community and they just loved my personality. They loved my smile. They loved my laugh. And all of a sudden it gave me permission to be me again. And it was like that true tribe of people that knew and understood me, know and understand me, that really gave me permission to come back to life after some really traumatic, self-inflicted traumatic experiences. Yeah.
It's interesting. There's a lot there in regards to like, your tribe, because that's a true, like, as you just said, that's a true story right there of how you had to find a community that truly accepted you, where you could take your mask off and not feel like you're ugly. That's probably the best way to put it. And I posted a quote on my Instagram recently on my personal page that said, so many, something along the lines of, so many of us wear so many masks that we've forgotten what our own face looks like. And like, it's true, because what you're saying about how you can't communicate the emotion, I felt that in certain rooms that I've been in. It's like, I'm present, like I'm technically here in the room, physically there, my presence is there, but I can't speak to you because your level of consciousness is on a completely different level. Now, I'm not judging you. I'm not coming from a place of judgment. I just don't feel comfortable. And like what you were saying about the gut, there's a massive difference between your head and your gut. If you take the time to meditate and really feel the differences, the feelings in your body, like you should just become very attuned to that. And I'm sure you are, from the situations that you've been in. And when I find myself in those sort of situations, I think, like, what is it trying to tell me right now? And what it's telling me is that this isn't the right tribe for you. Like, you can't thrive here. And one thing I actually realized was, when you're around the reason that people say you should be around people who push you and who are, are progressing and trying to be successful in areas you want to be successful in. I always thought that was more of a cliche thing in personal development, whatever. But now I've truly understood the real reason is because I've been in a room recently of people who I can't be myself with. Because you're outnumbered. Everyone in that room was on a different level, drinking, partying, thinking about money. And I was just like, I can't conversate past the surface level. I just can't, because if I say anything deep, they'll think I'm weird. They'll make a comment, they'll laugh at me. And then if I flip that to, like, for example, being at Thrive, I didn't have any masks on. I was just allowing myself to go in any type of conversation, go as deep as I could, because everyone there was deep. So it didn't, then if someone who was drinking, partying and doing drugs came there, they would be the outcast. And so naturally I thrived in that area because so many other people were championing that side of my personality, which is just me. And so it's important for us to find that. And I can see that you deeply resonate with that as well.
Yeah, definitely 100%. And a lot of the times, like, when you are that authentic, you can make other people fearful of themselves by bringing up authentically, things that are authentic and genuine to yourself, and things that, at the end of the day, I think all of us, when we were kids, knew that it wasn't about the money, that it wasn't about the fame, that it wasn't about the things that society would maybe lead us to believe now. But we have so many layers and so many masks on. Some people have so many masks on now that they forget about that. And the only reason why I whipped my phone out for a second was to write that quote down, because that one's going on Facebook. I bet you that a lot of people freak out about that one, because that's so true. Like, there are so many people out there that have so many masks on that they forget who they truly are. And I think that that can be, a tough situation in the personal development realm for me, because there have been days, I quit drinking alcohol 2 years ago, launched my first company, launched my first podcast this year, January 22nd. And there have been days in the last 6 months where I look at myself in the mirror and I'm like, is that even you? Like, is that even, are you really, like, and it's funny because I'm actually finally transcending back to this person that I was before I got into drugs, before I got into alcohol, and before a lot of the reasons why I got into drugs and alcohol was because I was externally validating my existence through being a good skier. And as soon as I couldn't be a good ski racer, and as soon as people stopped telling me that I was going to make the U.S. ski team and that I had potential to go to the Olympics, my self-worth and my self-identity was destroyed, because that's where I validated myself from, was from others. So it can totally be a double-edged sword if it's based off of needing to perform at a certain level to be validated, versus just showing up authentically how you feel and how you are in the moment and being validated for that. And it's like, I'm finally coming back and looking at myself in the mirror right now and being like, oh, it is you. but it's been this long time coming of like I wore so many masks. I was trying to be someone that I wasn't for the longest time. And like there are still days where I'm like, well, was I really a professional skier? Like I was sponsored, I made some money off of it, but did I ever support myself fully off of skiing? No, I always had a second job. And like, you know, there are times where like I think about it, but then at the end of the day, I was in the top 99.9% of all skiers, not just all people in skiing, but of all skiers in skiing. Of course you're a professional skier. You know, you competed and you were in the top 25 in the world on the freeride qualifier circuit. Of course you are. But then it's like I almost had to put a mask on for a little bit, or, you know, like sometimes a mask does become part of you, or, you know, like it is you, but it is a slightly separate, like there's all these little crazy distinctions that come along with all of that. But yeah, it's so true. Like, at Thrive, man, like you have those authentic connections and those people who like want to make money, but they want to make money matter, and they want to make a difference in the world, and they're here for authentic connections. And it's like all of a sudden you just like, you can feel your nervous system just relax, and like your shoulders will rock down your back, and you're like, oh, like I'm here, I'm home, right? Like,
exactly. Yeah, these guys get me. Yeah, so it makes a ton of sense, definitely. And I think we're all on a journey, because I was talking to I had Philip McKernan on the podcast, which his episode will be released soon, next week, I think, from the date that we're recording this. But he was talking about masks, and he put it beautifully, so I don't want to butcher it, but he was saying we're all in the process of taking off masks. It's not that we haven't got any on. We've all got them on. It doesn't matter what you say. We've all got them on. It's the process. What our job to do is go through the process of taking them off one by one. And so by the end of it, you're back down to your childlike, authentic self. That's then really you. And I guess all of us can then feel it when we know we've come to that place in our life, when we just feel more in alignment. That's probably the best way to put it. We're in alignment with our truth, and we feel confident that we're able to talk about it without feeling like, oh, we need to justify or explain. When you come to that place, then I think, you know, you're in a place of real power.
Yeah, totally. And it's totally true, because like if a mask becomes too comfortable, or, you know, let's say like the face that the authentic feeling that you have right now in this moment, if it becomes too comfortable and you start to live from this moment as time progresses, it becomes a mask. And then it's the layer of taking that off to figure out what the next one is. Because it's like, as soon as you place your validation externally, and there is an external world, so there's a level of like asking the questions of the universe, asking the questions of God, like, you know, am I really supposed to be a public speaker? And at the end of the day, like God could tell you no a million times, and the one time he says yes, it says yes, then, you know, your world opens up. And so like there is a certain level of external validation that helps with that, but as soon as you tie yourself in the external validation or in what someone else thinks about you while you're expressing yourself, you actually you just like create a mask right there. You start living in the past because of it. So that's awesome. I'm really looking forward to listening to that podcast, because he is just an incredible human. I need to email him about doing a one last talk in Boulder for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think he's going to be holding it in. That's the hometown, definitely the hometown. But I mean, I think he's going to be bringing it to Dublin, which I'm hoping to be a part of there. I definitely want to do a one last talk as well. So that should be amazing. But I mean, just changing the tune a little bit. One thing I was really curious to know, and I think people who don't do skiing will probably be curious to know, is did you ever come close to death? And what were your situations? If you could just tell some live stories and examples around that and how you dealt with that.
I have come close to death on several occasions. I have set off some avalanches. I set off an avalanche in Montana when I I wasn't wearing my beacon. So for a lot of people that don't know, they're like, well, it's just like some random, like you could kick off an avalanche anywhere. Well, that's not quite the case. It's a combination of the way that the snow falls, the angle of the slope, how much pressure you put on certain aspects of the slope. And it's a very scientific thing. And I was out with a photographer and a friend, and I ended up being the first one down, and we were on the leading edge. So like if storm comes in and it pushes snow, the storm's coming in, the wind is coming this way, it'll push and load a lot of snow on the top ridge line of this mountain. Well, we skied out on this ridge line and then dropped in on this wind-loaded face, and 3 turns in, I kicked off an avalanche that was about 1.5 feet deep and 150 to 200 feet wide. And we had beat the ski patrollers. We actually passed the ski patrollers on the way out. Ski patrollers are normally out there mitigating avalanche risk, helping people that get hurt, everything in that. And because avalanches are prevalent in backcountry skiing, we've created technologies called beacons that are location beacons that tell us where a person is if they do get caught in an avalanche. I was an idiot that day. I had gone out, got drunk the night before, was partying, and woke up the next morning, forgot my beacon, and ended up at the top of the mountain kicking off an avalanche without wearing my beacon.
What's a beacon? So
the beacon is what allows you to locate another person if they get trapped under the snow.
Okay, so it's like a GPS tracking system thing, or?
Yeah, and it's kind of like the size of a cell phone-ish, a little bit like thicker generally, and you have it strapped underneath all of your gear really close to your body. So like in an avalanche is super powerful, just like a river is. It essentially is similar to a river, right? It's snow moving with the force of gravity, and it has a lot of mass to it, and it can really own you. And so, you keep it really close to you, and you have it tucked in close to your body, and it just puts off a signal that allows other skiers in your party to find you if you are the one that gets caught in an avalanche. And so it has a send mode and a receive mode. As soon as an avalanche is kicked off, anyone who wasn't caught in the avalanche puts it into receive mode, and then it'll tell you what direction to walk. So you end up going out I ended up going out and setting this avalanche off, and that was, a reality for me. That definitely scared me into always wearing my beacon, even on resort. And a lot of the times, like, resorts are supposed to have avalanche mitigation. So, there are avalanches that happen at resorts. And that's one of the things that so many people think that, like, because we've created such a perfect, quote unquote, perfect societal infrastructure of like the grocery store and like these laws and frameworks and everything, that like, that nature isn't nature, you know what I mean? So like, obviously there's always a risk of being out on a ski resort, but that convinced me to wear my beacon always. I am sure that there's a number of other situations where I've almost passed away. The one that really comes to mind is 2.5 years ago, and this was what set off my whole personal development, entrepreneurial journey, my awakening into this person that I am. And I am so I hit this jump, and I'm trying to like figure out the best part to start the story. So I guess like I'm riding up the chairlift, and for whatever reason I get distracted on my phone. I think I was like Instagramming, who knows what I was doing, but I got distracted on my phone. Didn't put my helmet on. I was wearing my backpack, and my helmet was in my backpack. And I'm skiing down, and I'm like, stoked about what's going on. And so I go, and I had recently hurt my shoulder on this jump by over rotating a backflip. So I come in, I hit this jump, and I was actually having some stress, a high tension situation with my girlfriend, my ex-girlfriend now, but my girlfriend at the time. And I saw her skiing with some other people. I wasn't really too stoked on it. And I skied by her, and like I slapped her on the butt and was like, "Hey, what's up?" And like just like played it off as if I wasn't feeling emotions about it. Cruise down, hit this jump, and lay out this massive backflip, and I stomp it. And it's like bigger than I had been bigger than I had gone on that jump before, and the best stomp that I had had. And it's all in the same run, and I'm coming down, and there's this tree, and then this line of trees, and this jump, and it sends you into this run, and you can boost like 50, 60 feet into this nice landing. But there at the running parallel to the side of it is this line of trees that dog legs and closes out. So if you mess up, there's a good chance you're hitting the trees. And I launch off, and I go bigger because I had confidence from stomping that backflip. I go bigger on that, land, and I bend my ski as I land, and it's permanently bent now. It's kicking around Crested Butte somewhere. But I bend my ski because the snow had become more aerated from the day before, so it was a little bit softer. So I punched through a little bit harder, and it bent my ski. My tip bent, and that caused me to start cartwheeling. So I cartwheeled head over heels about 4.5 times, and I can just remember head over heels just thinking, please not my head, please not my head, please not my head, and then whack. And my back, I hit this tree. This tree is maybe 12 inches in diameter, pretty decent sized tree, not going anywhere, and I hit it like 3 feet from the base. So it's a place where it's deeply rooted. I smack my back on this tree, get tossed around it, and I end up about 6 feet below the tree. And I was lying there, and I remember sitting there thinking like, wow, everything that I have been doing up until this point in my life has been to have other people's eyes on me. But I never had a purpose for having their eyes on me besides it made me feel good. My ego was being stroked, and I felt validated. But I wasn't truly being validated for anything worth being validated for. And that was one of the biggest distinctions I've ever had in my whole life, or the most clarity that, for me, I call it God or the universe. I'm okay with using them interchangeably, but it's like insight that God spoke to me and said, you need to do this selflessly. You need to go out and demonstrate your life in a way for others. And so I didn't realize until I was in the hospital getting a CAT scan and, found out that my back had been broken, and it was just the transverse process or the spinal process of L4. So it was just one of the wings that sticks off the back. And it really, at the end of the day, I was so lucky that it wasn't my head, it wasn't my shoulder, it wasn't my femur. Like, there are so many number of things. And I realized my helmet was in my backpack right where I hit the tree. My helmet saved me from being paralyzed, saved my life, even though I wasn't wearing it the way that I should have been. And it's one of those situations where you just question everything. You're like, well, that was the wrong decision to be making, to not put my helmet on, to be Instagramming, to be looking for external validation on the internet while I'm riding the chairlift in a beautiful paradise. And I could have just been sitting back, relaxing, enjoying the nature around me, loving what was happening around me. I was wanting and needing this external validation from everyone. And then not 45 seconds to a minute later, being wrapped around the bottom of a tree thinking, holy shit, I could have died. And because I was distracted by the external validation, it saved my life, but it taught me a major lesson about the whole external validation. And then a month and a half later, this really was a huge internal battle for me. I lost one of my best friends, and I was supposed to go out and see him before I broke my back. And I had an expectation that I was going to be able to see him, because you never expect a friend's going to die, right? You never expect that these things could happen, even though we're dealing with these situations where we're playing with life and death, situations and contexts. And my friend Jordan Niedrich passed away speed flying, and I was supposed to learn how to speed fly from him 2 weeks later. And for those, a lot of people mistake speed flying with wingsuiting. Wingsuiting is where you have the squirrel suit on. Speed flying is a high-speed paraglider, so it's similar to a parachute, but it's very small, so you're descending at a very fast rate. And you can accelerate to slow down, so you can speed up to get yourself to plane out and land and stuff. But a lot of the times, like, speed flyers can go 80, 90 miles an hour falling out of the sky. And I was supposed to go out and learn from him, and he passed away. And I felt so much shame and guilt for the life that I had lived up until that point, that of being hedonistic, of chasing drugs and alcohol, and of doing all the things. Even though I had finally found my community, I was still doing things for external validation. I found people that loved me and found people that loved my smile, but I wanted more than them to just honor my smile. I wanted them to think I was the most badass skier in the world, or I wanted them to think that X, Y, Z, I was the shit for whatever reason. And I felt so much. He was so humble, and he is just one of the most amazing people I've ever met in my life. And I felt guilt about being alive and him not. And I came to this realization that I needed to really start living with humility and really start living with other people in mind. And then 6 months later, I ended up with a felony trespassing charge for being over at my ex-girlfriend's house at 2:00 in the morning, because that relationship had dwindled from us having high tension when I broke my back to just a really shitty relationship. I was showing up like a fucking asshole. I was an awful fucking human for a while in that. But I had a lot of trauma. I had broken my back. Skiing had been taken away from me. My best friend had been taken away from me. I started to drink again. I couldn't really see a purpose in life. And all of a sudden, I really wanted to help people, but I didn't know how. I didn't know what was going to happen through all of it. And so that's I know that is a lot right there, but that's a situation where I almost passed away, and through all of it, my life, that's how I found the legacy that I want to live. And that's how I found how I want to become, how I am becoming the person that I am today. And I hired a life coach almost 2 years ago to the day, I think, probably maybe a little bit past that, just under 2 years ago. Hired a life coach. 6 months later, ended up being hired in sales for a different life coaching company, cold calling Nicholas Bayerly of the $1 Billion Body, who we talked about earlier, who's been part of Thrive Connect. He turned around, sold me on the live event. I went out. I had to borrow money to go to the live event. I had tried to open up a credit card, but it didn't come in time. But I had a $10,000 limit. He pitches a mastermind that, this is a little bit over a year ago, that was $10,000. I walk up to him and was like, look, I borrowed money to come out here. I've got just I've got like $260. I'll give you 250 and live off of 10 for the rest of the weekend if you'll take that as a deposit, invested in the mastermind. And this was a place where I could have been really fearful and could have let, my head get in the way, but my heart was telling me, you need to do this. You need to be a part of these like-minded individuals. The whole year prior, I had been suffering because my direction had changed and I didn't find community in the ski community anymore. I was looking for world changers, game changers, people who were thinking at a huge level and people who really wanted to live this entrepreneurial lifestyle. And so I'm like, look, I can give you this amount of $250 now. When I get home, I have a credit card that's waiting for me there, $10,000 limit. I'm ready to go all in. He ended up bringing in Pat Flynn and Jordan Harbinger and Ryan Mitchler, people who are crushing it on the podcasting scene. I was able to learn from them about how to launch a podcast, turned around, launched a podcast. It became Top in Sports in iTunes in March, and it bounces all around. Sometimes it's like not even in the top 200. Sometimes it's in the top 10. Lately, it kind of floats all around. And now I've, a year and a half later after that, so 2 years ago I quit drinking. A year and a half ago I had to admit guilt in the felony trespassing. And then a year and a quarter ago I invested in the mastermind. All these different things, and it's turned around into a point where now I have a book coming out that is teaching people the 12 steps of their hero's journey from my perspective, and I really get to turn around and impact people by telling the stories that I have experienced in my life, by being the person that I am, by being able to say, hey, look, I went through these paths and I don't regret them, but maybe I could have made better decisions. And here's what I would have done if I would, here's what I would do if I were someone going through this right now. These are the steps that I would take. And it's crazy because it took almost dying, losing my best friend, and getting a felony to fucking wake me the hell up and show me that I had a bigger purpose in life. And if I didn't take those and figure out how to become grateful each time, I don't know that you'd see me today. I don't know that I'd even be alive today in a lot of ways. And so, I just ranted for a long time. But it's crazy how those experiences of truly life and death experiences will simplify and humble you to open your heart and open your mind to the possibilities of okay, I really want external validation, but how do I do it in a way that benefits others? And it's okay to to have these wants and these needs, but how do we do it in a way that facilitates energy exchange and that facilitates the growth of humanity in a way that, allows us to live powerfully for ourselves and others.
I love your answer, by the way. So don't think that it's not valuable, because definitely there was a lot of jam-packed valuable knowledge and lessons in there. So I'm glad you took the time to share that. I'm glad you touched on the thing about legacy and thinking about giving your life some purpose and some meaning, and a reason for other people to actually look to you and look to you for some advice and guidance, and have their eyes on you. You want it to be worth their while. So just before I get into the final 3 questions, I'm just curious, from all the people that you've spoken to now, the other high-class world achievers, what are the 2 or 3 lessons that you've taken away from them that people can implement in their lives?
So, learning how to master fear, which we talked about, learning how to disseminate the information that fear is giving you and deconstructing it into powerful thoughts and powerful actions is really huge. Because at the end of the day, fear will kill more dreams than anything else. So mitigating fear, understanding calculated risk is huge in the entrepreneurial world, in the athletic world, and in anything that any sort of risk, being able to be calculated about it is super important. Mindfulness, meditation, breath, physical health, understanding physiology, understanding the human experience at a very deep level. I think a lot of the world changers have been able to deconstruct their experience down to understanding like the human experience of it all, and they've been able to build upon mindfulness and meditation routines that allow them to silence their mind and take care of their physical health, routines that help them take care of their physical health and that help them take care of their vessel and their body. You know, I'm doing a presentation for my old ski team, and I had a meeting today about it. And in one of my slides that I created, it's like, the body is the vessel that you have been given to execute your vision and mission and your dreams and goals in this world. And so being able to take care of your mind and your body and cultivate the spirit inside of you to push past that indomitable spirit, to push past failures, to push past irrational fear, those are two really, really powerful. And there's a lot condensed in there because it's fitness, it's nutrition, it's meditation, it's mindfulness, it's understanding physiology. And that's a really wide, it's a big topic. But at the end of the day, playing around with the body and the biomechanical physiology that we've been given, understanding fear, and then, like silencing the mind and creating powerful routines. That's what all of them share in common, is they practice. They practice what they preach. They take care of themselves and their whole self, their emotional, spiritual, and mental and physical self. And they are able to dissect the information that's disseminated through the nervous system to untangle what the truth is.
I think, yeah, you're right there. I mean, that's one of the key things I've seen in many of the books, videos, people that I've been exposed to over the years. It's like their perception of fear is completely different. And that's why I'm so glad that we deep dived into that at the start, because I think people are going to find that invaluable, because the way that they now go and approach situations will change, and that will then go and change the outcome and the dominoes that are fallen and pushed because of that as well. So no, I appreciate you taking the time to speak. So let me just go into the final 3 questions, and then we can wrap this one up. And I'm sure there'll be many more parts and sequels to this as well.
I'm sure of it, because this is just a small little snippet. Yeah. For sure. A lot of information condensed down into one, but I know that we could chat for hours and hours.
Yeah, tell me about it. Yeah, so I mean, with everything you've learned now, so much, I mean, we just covered in this short space of an hour and a half, but I mean, is there anything different? And what would you say to the 18-year-old Scot?
So I was asked this the other day, and it blew someone's mind. I wouldn't talk to him because I love where I'm at right now. I love where I'm at. And even though I went through so many messed up experiences, and maybe I could have made some better decisions throughout it all, I wouldn't be the person that I am today if I didn't go through those experiences. And those experiences have shaped me and give me more tools in the tool belt to be able to help other people, to be able to authentically relate to other people's human experience. So I would watch him walk past without saying a freaking thing.
You're one of the very few people who've said that answer, because that's exactly what I tell people when they ask me, or when I think about it myself. I'm like reflecting on where I've come from and what I've gone through. And I'm like, you know what? The amount of pain I went through, I'd do it all over again. As crazy as it sounds, because that's what's brought me to today. And I don't want to be anyone different to today. That's what makes me unique. That's what makes me do what I do. And I don't know what I'd be like had I taken another path. And so, no, I'm so glad we shared that perspective as well. That's crazy. So if there's anything you could write on a piece of paper, just one statement, and that statement is now going to be put in a time capsule for generations from now to read, what's the one statement you'd want them to read?
Um, I love you and do the best you have with what you've got.
Yeah, that's deep because we can only do what do the best with what we've got in the moment, and I don't think we should judge ourselves because of it. It's just about making the most of the situation we find ourselves in. So that's powerful. Um, and just to wrap up with the last one, then we touched on this a little bit, but just to drop the big bomb on you, you've now come to the end of your life, whatever age that might be. What's the legacy you hope to have left behind by that time?
So it is completely intangible in a lot of ways, but I want to die knowing 1,000 generations could survive us and are going to survive us. And it's something that I am putting out into the world because I want people to think about more than just this moment. I want people to think about more than just this lifetime. I want people to think about more than just the current context of society and start thinking about future generations, start thinking about what it takes to take care of each other in emotional, spiritual, physical ways, and what it's truly going to take to course correct society to be able to have 1,000 generations survive us. And it takes a team. It takes the whole. One of my friends runs a company called Team Human, and it's like it takes all of Team Human to rally together and to work on ourselves. It all comes down to working on yourself. It always, always, always comes down to working on yourself. But if I'm working on myself and I'm supported by you, and you're working on yourself and you're supported by me, and the next person is, and the next person is, and the next person, and we all are doing the best we have with what we've got. We're all trying the hardest that we can to be the people that we need to be in the world. Then I truly think that there is going to be this conscious shift where all of a sudden, and I believe, and I don't think that it's necessarily like too unrealistic. Like I walked into King Soopers the other day and I saw this sign eliminating food waste. And King Soopers, for it's a grocery store for people that don't know. It says eliminating food waste by 2025. And that was the first sign. I've been talking about this with people. This is the first time I've ever put this out on a podcast or with people that like a large amount of people is going to hear this. And it's a very intimidating notion. And sometimes it feels egotistical to even say that that's like why I think I'm here on this planet. But it comes down to like I got validated the other day in King Soopers because it's like a corporation is taking control of things that don't necessarily, they will improve the bottom line in the long run, but they're taking control of their social impact. And they're, and so, at the end of the day, what I really truly want is to die knowing 1,000 generations can survive us. And I want people to know my name. And it doesn't matter if they know my name or if they call me freaking George Bob the Third, whatever, or even if I don't really even if I don't get credited with it, I don't need that. It's more just this idea of dying, knowing that enough people out there started to think about passing down generational knowledge, started working on themselves, started working on their emotional quotient, their communication, how they deal with fear, their interconnection. Now I'm going to go on just a real quick tangent again.
Do it.
So I've been geeking out about this. At the event in San Diego, $1 Billion Body Live, Christopher Walker said that if you can limit cellular entropy, so the transference of energy from cell to cell, then the greater expression of beauty at the whole organism level is greater. So because energy or life or God is the organization of the chaos in the world. The universe trends towards disarray, entropy, chaos. And somehow you and I are walking miracles. We're organized matter. We don't have to make our heart beat. We don't have to make our, we can choose to breathe, but we don't have to make our stomach break down proteins into enzymes and feed it out to every little piece. And like, we are these walking miracles, and it's God or life or energy that organizes this chaos in the world. And if we can limit the entropy, the transfers of energy between ourselves, the greater expression of beauty at the whole level is the best that it can be. Applying this to the human organism, if you are a cell and if I'm a cell, if I can limit the entropy, so like the anger that's expressed, if I can increase my communication skills so that when you hear me, you hear my true essence, not this mask that I'm putting out there, not what I want you to hear, but if you hear the true energetic signature of what I'm trying to express to you, the transference of energy, there's limited entropy. And if we can do that at an individual level and learn how to communicate and learn how to lift each other up and learn how to not waste energy on worrying about other people, on worrying about the extraneous things, on worrying about all the BS that's drawing us down, and we can actually just put this energy that we're given, this emotion, these amazing feelings that we're given, this amazing consciousness that we've been given, and apply that towards transferring energy and giving love to the people around us, then all of a sudden the greater expression of beauty at the whole human race level, the whole human organism level, is going to be so beautiful. It is going to be amazing, because we're not going to have fear. We're not going to have fear for the scarcity of resources, which resource scarcity is one of the biggest things that has caused war in our entire, existence. Is you have land, I think that I need that land because I think I need food, so I'm going to kill you for it. If we can stop being afraid of other people, if we can learn how to collaborate, if we can work on ourselves to be this loving person in the world that can turn around and communicate and understand and empathize with everyone around us, and use this energy that we've been given in this consciousness to apply it to being the best person that we can be over and over and over, then the world's going to change, and it's going to be a fucking beautiful ass place. Like, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot of the similar things that you've been touching on there. It's a lot of high consciousness or high level consciousness thoughts. Like, that's some fucking deep shit, and people that are not following that need to take some mushrooms and listen to it again. But I mean, have you heard of Tim Urban? He's a guy that writes really, really long, like, perspectives on topics like this, like esoteric topics like this. I'll send you a link to it. And he talks about the human colossus, which is basically like, at the cellular level, there's different cells in our body. And then we've got gut microbiomes, which are even smaller. But and then at a slightly bigger level, you look at me and you as two different cells in the world, because we're just a collection of cells. But then me and you put together, we're two different cells in the world. And then if you put all those cells, people together, that he calls that the human colossus, because we are just one big cell. And if some of us are sick and we're not like the mindset isn't right, or the perspectives or the thoughts aren't right, then some part of the colossus, some part of humanity will still be sick. We're not going to progress or go as far as we possibly could should the collective together have holistic health. So not just holistic health like individually, me and you, but imagine the whole colossus, all of us put together, we're going through holistic health, and we're collaborating rather than resisting. You know, so that idea is crazy, because then you've got on a more on a bigger scale, you've then got planets, stars. They're all working in sync, as you said. Like your stomach, like, has the right amount of acid to break down your food. Your blood runs through the veins and the arteries at the right speed. You're not thinking, oh, go slower, go faster. My heart needs to beat a little bit faster just to keep my energy. Like, it does it. And so everything orbits and moves around the same, in the same fashion by itself. And so one of the quotes that I like to live by is by Gandhi, which is, be the change you want to see in the world. And every time I feel it's difficult to control other people's behavior, and I'm thinking like, why is it that I'm trying to do good and other people are so fucking dumb? And it's like, it's not, I can't control their behavior, but I can control mine. If I keep bringing it back to my own accountability and think, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? I will then always be in control of my situation, circumstance, and then destiny.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, man, we need a part 2. But,
we do.
But yeah, just to wrap this up, where can people find you, follow you, like, you know, social, website, you know, splur it out for people?
Cool. So I am on Facebook, Scot J. Chrisman. Scot is spelled with one T. I've got a website, scotjchrisman.com. My Instagram, I've got 2. I've got a skiing one, which is just Scot Chrisman Skiing. And then I've got Scot J. Chrisman. And other than that, I've got a book coming out called YOLO. If you do it right, once is enough. A 12-step guide to your hero's journey. It's all about honoring consciousness, taking care of yourself. That'll be released here in November of 2018. It is November, so it'll be released this month. I'm really, really, really excited about that. It's on pre-sale now. It should be on sale probably by the time this podcast launches, depending on when that is. But yeah, and I am always down. Or you can email me at Scot, spelled with one T, at theathleticstance.com. And I'm always willing to develop connections, interpersonal connections with anyone who feels called to have a conversation with me. I would love to sit down and have a phone call, video chat, whatever it is, with anyone that feels called, like if they feel just like inspired, awakened, alive after this conversation, if they want to learn more about me, or if they just want to bro down and chat and be like, yeah, I totally feel that, whatever it is, or if they want to give me constructive feedback or tear me a new, whatever, I'm welcome to it all. And man, thank you so much. This has been an honor. This has been absolutely incredible to have this conversation, and I really look forward to part 2.
No, definitely, man. I'm blessed that and honored that you took the time and effort to do this. So no, thank you so much for being here, and definitely touch base with you sometime again soon.
Cheers, bro.